So, there I was, working on a bunch of other writing and world building, much bigger videos when suddenly Netflix dropped a full-on, massive-ass trailer for the live-action Avatar series. Let's go. There's already like 2.5 million views. Overall impressions, I am cautiously optimistic. It looks like Avatar, it sounds like Avatar, but you need to understand Avatar and why it was done the way it was. And it's hard to tell anything till we've seen the writing. I want to remind people of the teaser trailer we got for the M. Night Shyamalan movie, which again kind of had that looks like Avatar, sounds like Avatar thing, and was it Avatar? No. But interviews with the actors and the creators do give me hope. Ultimately though, I think a part of me is excited and equally terrified. Also, thank you so much to all my patrons, new and old. Patreon literally makes this possible for me. It means I can take time to work on bigger projects like I am doing right now. You are miracle workers, and if you would like to support the channel, if you like what I do, for a couple bucks, it would mean the world. Link below, cool community. I remain skeptical about some of the bigger changes they're making, because bold move, we'll see if it pays off. And we see one of those changes right at the start of the trailer.
The Fire Nation is embarked on a dark path, and the world might never recover. The world needs the Avatar.
We see, right here, look at this, Fire Lord Sozin taking part in the Air Nomad genocide, the leader of the Fire Nation himself. The Air Nomad genocide is one of the things that we did not see in the original series, and we finally will. But for this to work, for me, it needs to be brutal. It needs to be a massacre. I need to see innocent people getting slaughtered. Don't clip that. Sozin leading the genocide is one of those, well, we can't say it didn't happen things, like Sozin could have been there. This clip might even be Monk Gyatso's final stand, judging by the Fire Nation soldiers' bodies littered around him. We see that in the series. Gyatso is speaking at the time. He's warning that the Fire Nation is setting itself on a dark path. Having Sozin at the genocide is, I think, possibly a good change. I think generally I'm in favor of giving characters more agency, having them be more proactive, and the Fire Lord being a more physical presence just as a role in the story might be really good, even if this isn't Ozai. I will say I do think the firebending looks a little bit weak here. They're supposed to be the comet-powered firebenders. That's why it's a slaughter. It's so easy to wipe them all out because they're that powerful. But I feel like this is kind of like more ordinary firebending. Part of the reason we showed this is so one-sided, that it is a massacre, is because it establishes the stakes for when the comet is going to come back in the series. That again, the firebenders are going to be able to be this powerful and do this stuff again. But the trailer also opens with Zhao's fleet approaching the north. It's Zhao's by the bow on the ship, having this giant golden dragon lion, and this shot of Appa over the forest. This will be the forest that Aang finds burned down in the Spirit World episode, which will be episode 5 of the Netflix series titled Spirited Away, a reference to the Ghibli film. The ships look great. I think they're fantastical, but also realistic. And I think they really need to lean into that sense of hyper-reality, that Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, that kind of vibe, which is just slightly above the real, That's really good.
It needs you, Aang.
We then get a bunch of familiar images. If you've seen the show, you'll know these. These are recognizable shots. These will be the opening couple of episodes, the light in the sky. This signals to Zuko where Aang is. It's almost straight from the show. However, this is also common in adaptations, that they will start very similar but end quite differently. And we do see Aang in the Avatar state a couple of times throughout this trailer. And this is where we get to one of those changes, because the creators have said they're changing the Avatar state. Quote, "We wanted to make it very clear Aang could only access the Avatar state in a very specific set of circumstances. We actually tweaked the rules as to when and how Aang can access the Avatar state." What does this mean? Because in the original series, Aang can only enter the Avatar state when he's desperately threatened for his life or incredibly emotional. It happens like 6 times or so in the first season. And maybe they're raising that bar. Maybe it's only when previous avatars can give Aang a skill that he doesn't have, or at certain times of the day, maybe dawn and dusk when the spirit worlds and mortal realms are closest together. I don't know. What do you think it'll be? This change, I am a bit more skeptical of, because I think the Avatar state works great.
The Fire Nation has destroyed everything in their path.
We then get this shot of a Fire Nation city, and some people will say that this is the Fire Nation capital. I am not so sure. Like, there is a river at the bottom of the screen here, and the capital is inside a volcanic caldera up a mountain. And the mountains seem a little far off for that, unless they're changing the scale of the Fire Nation, of the capital, of these cities, of these places, just to make it way bigger, way more vast. That is possible. We then get Daniel Day Kim as Ozai, and he looks fantastic. The other commanders here look a little awkward and not in a good way. They don't like sort of help elevate Ozai here. Yeah, I'm not so sure. And it's here we start to get into some of those bigger changes to the series. First, they're putting Azula in season 1. In the original series, she barely appears, but I think this is a good change to establish her more, to develop her dynamic with Zuko, to foreshadow her role in the story. What I'm worried about, because a lot of Azula is probably going to be in flashbacks, I don't know what they would do with kind of a parallel story with her. I'm worried that they're going to show too much of Zuko's past, too much of his childhood, because it is critical, it is essential that we see Zuko as a villain before we see him as a victim, and that's what we see in his childhood. We see where those behaviors come from. And the same goes for Azula, by the way. She was abused and neglected and manipulated and used by her psychopath father for his own ends. You know, she is a 14-year-old girl, and we see too much of that child with a Swell's eye, and we're always just going to start seeing her as a victim, as a product of her circumstances, rather than as a villain first. And that's, you know, the sadness of their story, is that we realize why they're like this. That is really important for me, and if they miss that mark, I'm not going to be happy about it. You will also know, if you pay very, very close attention, my friends, you will notice that Azula is using a bow and arrow, which she never does in this series. But someone pointed out to me that this kind of fits with her character. You know, she's obsessed with perfection, and the bow is a weapon of accuracy and precision. And it's sort of a parallel to Zuko using his swords. I could be on board with this. You'll see that this is part of some training montage, that someone else training beside her, also firing a bow. So Azula using a bow more? I'm kind of hopeful for that change. However, it is this brief shot of an explosion that actually hides one of the biggest changes in the series that we know of. They are cutting the Northern Air Temple episode, or more, they're moving the Mechanist storyline to Omashu. This is Teo in the corner, and that explosion is probably the Mechanist, an experiment going wrong, possibly why the fire is green, I don't know. And we see this shot later on in the trailer of Aang and Teo flying together like they do in that episode, but it's in Omashu. Question is, will this change work? I don't know. In the original series, the Mechanist story takes place in the Northern Air Temple, and it's a bit of a weird episode, honestly. It has a bunch of really important stuff for the story. We see Sokka's inventiveness, his arc, we see the Mechanist betrayal, we see Aang's horror at the desecration of his home and temple. There's this whole new location. We've got the discovery of flight, which is incredibly important for the Fire Nation's development. But then it's also kind of rushed into a 22-minute episode. It is very much a product of the weekly 22-minute regular episode structure that they were stuck with at the time. Now, Netflix has dedicated a whole episode to Omashu, which I think is a good change. If they're going to do this sort of change, that's a good change, because it endears us to the people, to the culture, to this world, so that when/if bad things happen to it, we care, and who knows what's going to happen to Omashu. These are the sort of changes you see when you translate a 20-odd, 22-minute episode series into an 8 one-hour episode series. It's restructuring, and it's risky, because I don't just want there to be the Mechanist. I don't just want these characters to be there because they're in the story. I need the context and conflict and themes that, you know, wrap around these characters and their stories that made them meaningful. The Mechanist story shows us Sokka's inventiveness. It shows us Aang's despair at his home being desecrated, and this conflict over the world sort of forgetting its spiritual roots. And that stuff is so much more important than, oh, they have the Mechanist pushed into Omashu. We then get that moment where Iroh is captured and Zuko comes to rescue him, and we compare it with an image later in the trailer. And we see an ostrich horse. The VFX are not perfect. I mean, I really don't care that much about bad effects. I grew up on low-budget sci-fi TV. I think the issue here is it's kind of this recurring thing with Netflix shows where high-budget TV shows will often look cheap for some reason. Like, I don't know what it is. I don't know how this comes to be, but even with this trailer, as beautiful as it looks in some ways, there is this underlying feeling that it looks a little fake. And I don't know if it's the technology, I don't know if it was an artistic decision, but there's definitely something there that, while bad effects definitely don't stop me getting invested in a story, I do wonder why it is this way, when surely at this point it doesn't need to. It really does feel like Netflix has this problem with, like, a lot of their high-budget fantasy TV just looking kind of plasticky. I don't know what it is.
If the world is gonna have any chance, it's gonna need Aang.
Right. There goes the savior of the world.
We then get these shots of what's probably the Northern Water Tribe, judging by the ash, which seems to have fallen over the ice. It could also be the South when they were getting raided, but it's probably the North, judging by the architecture. Then we've got Katara. She's bringing that optimism. Sokka's the skeptic. That's a really important dynamic between the two of them, especially at the start of the series. I feel like the costumes need to be a bit more worn, but maybe they're just trying to keep the vibrant colors and cleanness of the series. You can see that they've definitely turned the saturation up on the trailer. That's maybe part of the artificiality. This, my friends, is Kyoshi Island. This is where the second episode is probably going to mostly take place. You can see the giant Kyoshi statue in the background. We also get the air scooter moment where Aang bonks into the statue, which is very recognizably referencing the opening cinematic.
His skills are great. He has a lot to learn before he's ready to save anyone.
Again, it is so hard to replicate that dynamic, elastic, larger-than-life feel you get in animation in live action. It's virtually impossible in some ways. I'd almost kind of prefer if they did sort of super hyper reality stuff, but maybe that wouldn't have landed with a popular audience, which they're clearly trying to get. What I will say is Sokka's line delivery here is good.
Right. There goes the savior of the world.
He sounds natural. He sounds like Sokka, and I'm so happy that they're not afraid of humor. You know, a lot of people are afraid that they're making it too dark for a mature audience, gritty, there's the genocide, but this shows that they're trying to keep that humor. And the creators have said as much, that the humor that their kids is really important, and it is.
I chased down every hint of the Avatar. It's my destiny.
This next section is mostly about Zuko. That's his ship in the south. It's small, it's pithy, it's Zuko. We then get his beautiful conspiracy board. He's around here somewhere with Yang Chen and not Korra, that'd be weird. Kyoshi, and the mountain here is possibly Roku's home. You know, that's the mountain where the last Avatar was seen, right? I do think Zuko's scar should be more visceral. You know, in the show, he can't open his scarred eye as much as he can his other eye. And this is something that they could just very easily retcon. Like, they could just literally make the next series and be like, okay, now your eye's darker and more visceral. They could just do that. I think more shows should do that. Just retcon things that they need to rather than trying to commit to it because that was what they originally did. The shot of the Fire Nation soldiers does look good, but I'm not sure I'm a fan of the sort of golden filter that's almost over what is possibly all the Fire Nation scenes. They might sort of do a color grading kind of like that. I don't know if that contributes to sort of the weird cheapness that you can sort of feel in some areas. Part of it's going to be, am I going to get used to it? Is it going to affect my enjoyment? I don't know.
I chased down every hint of the Avatar. It's my destiny.
I'm not someone who can stop the Fire Nation. I don't want the responsibility.
You don't have to do this alone. You have me, Tara, and a flying ball of fur. What more do you need?
Oh no. Oh no. I can already hear it. Ozai's hot, guys. Ozai's hot. People are already thirsting about him. I've seen people calling him the fire daddy or something like that. He's Swolzai. Now, the showrunners have confirmed this is Zuko and Ozai having their duel, so that is again something we don't really see in the original series, or something only alluded to. Am I a fan of this change? I don't know. I don't know if we needed it. I kind of liked the implication. I'm less a fan of them showing Ozai's face. In the original series, it was really important that we did not get to see Ozai until Zuko did. But they're clearly doing a lot more flashbacks, playing with that childhood, and they probably, well, the cynic in me thinks that they wanted to use Daniel Day Kim in their advertising campaign. The framing of the trailer definitely tells us that Aang's conflict for the first season is gonna be, I don't want to live up to being the Avatar, I don't want this responsibility, and then he's gonna be accepting it. Very in line with the show. I love this shot of Aapp. I think that this actually does feel real. It feels like they might have built an animatronic. I don't know. You know, interacting with animated creatures is really hard. It often looks stiff, like you're just patting some random piece of plastic, because often you are. That's exactly what you're doing. And Momo surprisingly looks kind of cute. I hope they took a leaf out of the page of his Dark Materials, because they did CGI animal companions incredibly well. And also, the chemistry between the cast and the scene, I actually like that. I think that feels good. I love that Aang is smiling. I love that they're laughing together.
The world needs you. Remember what it is we're really fighting for.
Okay, so here is something I am worried about. In this scene, we see Commander Zhao, one of the villains, arriving at Kyoshi Island. He never does that in the original series. Remember when I said we need to see Zuko as the villain before we see him as the victim? Well, in the series, he goes and burns down Kyoshi Village, basically. We see the terrible things he's willing to do. But we've seen nothing to suggest he comes to Kyoshi Island at all, and he might do something else, but I am worried that they're going to give some of Zuko's worst moments to Zhao, to make him more sympathetic, to make him more of an anti-hero rather than a villain, and I don't think that'd be a wise change. We then get the Shershu and Dune. Beautiful, intimidating, many other things. No notes. I do not know where this little shot of Aang flying towards a wall is meant to be. It's maybe an Earth Kingdom blockade, I don't know. But then, hey, bye. This is one of the spirits that they're going to encounter in the series has been warped and twisted by people burning down this forest. This fury and horror, and I so hope that they lean into this kind of creepy, unreal, different otherworld creature that's unlike anything cosmic horror-ish spirit world. I love that vibe. And we get a lot more of that in the books, and I hope that they draw on the stuff that we got in the books to make this work. And so making Heibai kind of this xenomorph-looking bastard, that's a great feel. And lastly, we have Aang summoning in Cloud. It could be a lot of different times, but I'm gonna bet it's the moment that the blue spirit, whoever that is, I don't know, who do you think it could be? Let me know in the comments. Him summoning up the cloud so that they can escape together. We then get these clips of Suki and Sokka fighting together, and honestly, they look pretty good. Bending needs to be as fast as it is in this trailer. It needs to kind of be snappy and back and forth. I think when it's slower, you notice more that the actors don't see what they're playing with, that they can't interact with it. Just little things, like where their eyes are going, their hands. I do suspect we're going to see some of that, I don't know what to call it, plastic fighting, where, someone gets bonked on the head and then they fall down and they're rolling around, they're unconscious, but they're definitely out of the fight, but they're not dead. They're not dead. You see this in a lot of shows. As an adult, it kind of grates me, but what are you going to do? Maybe it's just this clip.
The ones we love.
I'm the Avatar, and I'm gonna save the world. With my friends.
We then move on to a line from Aang, I'm the Avatar, and I'm going to save the world with my friends. It's that classic American optimism. Truth, justice, and the American way. I honestly think people are looking for that kind of optimism these days. We're kind of over gritty and dark and brutal. We need some light in the world. We get all these clips of Aang working alongside the Blue Spirit. I wonder who it is. Who do you know? Let me know down below. And this is the best airbending I think we've seen so far. It feels larger than life, it feels animated, it feels like it's leaning into that hyper-reality, that sort of Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End sort of energy. It is so hard to create things where people are interacting with stuff that they know actually doesn't exist. The visuals always feel just a little bit off, and so making it more extreme is often a better solution, but this is going to be a major challenge of a live-action adaptation. Also, remember Aang, I've never used my powers to kill anyone. I wonder how these dudes being yeeted off the side of a wall feel. I don't know what these images of Aang saving Katara and Sokka are. It's possibly some sort of amalgamation of the episode Imprisoned, where Katara goes along and helps free some earthbenders who have been imprisoned. That is again an episode I don't know how they're going to include. It doesn't seem to fit naturally with the episodes that they've already got, and it's a really important part of Katara's character arc.
With my friends.
This little montage, it's basically just, hey, you wanted bending? Here you go. You got fire bending, you got earth bending, you got water bending, you got air bending, you got if you can, you got a boomerang. Number one, Jet looks amazing. That's some of the most fluid fighting in the entire trailer. It's some of the best kind of fire effects that we've got in the entire trailer. Two, Boomy doesn't look amazing. I think it was a mistake to cast a young actor and then try to age him up with prosthetics. It doesn't look very good in the trailer. This is my least favorite bit of the trailer. The effects just aren't quite working for me here. It's clearly when Aang is fighting Boomy in the giant arena, but honestly, I think they should have cast Boomy as a legitimately old person. And instead of asking him to do, big, hard, ear-bending moves, they should have just had him do tiny little movements that have big earth-bending effects, which is, by the way, what we see him do in the series at times. We also get the shot of Zuko invading the south, him meeting Aang, there's a big explosion, fighting off the soldiers. It looks mostly pretty good, kind of fluid, fast. There's Katara and Zuko fighting in the Northern Water Tribe, but you've got to keep it fluid and fast and kind of feeling real, and we'll have to see. And lastly, as I said, Aang going into the Avatar state, but one little detail, you see his tattoos lighting up and there's actually like intricate patterns inside of it. This is something that I'm glad that they're doing. This is a change I like because in the animated series, you can just do blocky colors, blocky shapes. Here, they're introducing some detailing to his tattoos because tattoos, guys, they're detailed. They've got little swirls and designs, even if there are kind of broader shapes involved. That is a good thing. I hope we get to see it in more detail and it doesn't just look like that color from afar. Let me know your reaction down below. What do you like? What are you skeptical about? For me, I'm trying to look at this as a new way to kind of share the show with people, and hopefully they can dive into some of the stuff which we do have in the lore now, which they didn't have access to when they were originally making the series, and possibly they're able to do more with the bending than they were able to in animation. Potentially we have the technology to do that. I don't know if I saw that in this trailer, but we'll see. I know I haven't made like a video in a while. I'm perfectly aware of that, but I am working on things. I promise you I've got things going on in the background. I'm putting together a massive video, putting together some Ghibli stuff, video essays, writing content, world building content. It's all happening. That is coming out over the next, month or two. And of course the series is going to be dropping. I will be talking about that as well. Either way, let me know what you think. Stay nerdy, and I'll see you in the future.